Counting the.
Cost of being a speech language pathologist.
Oh, you added the language. So what do you do? How does it work, Deborah?
So, speech language pathology is basically dealing with any pathology or issues in speech or language. So, if you have any difficulties with speech or any language deficits, and this could be a result of anything, whether it's from when you're born or whether it's acquired later in life, whether it's genetic. Um, the speech pathologist, they will work with that person and basically help to enhance their communication.
What does pathology mean?
Pathology means like sickness. I should probably look this up. It's basically like the science of diseases. And so typically we think of diseases like very, towards the medical field, but there could also be conditions that affect speech and language. And so we call that almost like speech and language diseases or a speech and language pathology.
I never connected those two.
Yeah.
So what made you be interested in becoming a speech pathologist?
So I was debating between music. When I got into college, my original major was music performance, like before starting college. But I was also deciding um, whether I wanted to do health field instead. And so I kept going back and forth. But when I discovered speech pathology, I realized it was like a perfect blend between the two because I love the liberal arts side. I love language. I growing up, I loved writing and linguistics, but I also love being able to like think analytically, like a clinician. I enjoyed math growing up, and so when I found this, I realized this was like a great blend between the two because you do have to study a lot of sciences for it, but you also use a lot of creativity and um, language and just more of that left brain
Oh,
or
awesome.
right brain.
It's kind of interesting because I've been interviewing different people on their job experiences, and many people that have been interested in music or liberal arts realize it's not too much of a money making business, so they switch to health
Oh, oh,
industries
really?
in a
That's
sense.
interesting.
Yeah, it's almost mostly it was music and liberal arts, so I thought it was very
Okay.
interesting.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. So I'm glad I chose this field.
So, so what do you need to do to have this job?
So you need to get your master's in order to become a speech pathologist. There's no track that just takes you from a college bachelor's. So I completed my 4-year bachelor's at Andrews University, and then I went to Loma Linda for the 2 years master's program. However, there is an alternative job called SLIPA or speech pathologist assistant, and that one is only a 2-year program. Of course, it will make less money and you have more limitations of what you're legally allowed to do, but that's another option that's a shorter track.
Ah, so that's kind of like a certificate kind of course to be an
Yeah,
assistant.
more of a certificate, and it's better to, I think, just complete the speech pathologist whole program, if you want to do it anyway, because you're pretty much doing the same thing, but it's more opportunities for you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And
So,
then there's plenty of tracks that universities offer that are instead of 6 years, because bachelor's plus master's is six, they'll offer 5-year tracks where they help you to do the bachelor's quickly, so that you can go into the master's faster too.
so if you have bachelor's of any sort, it would work if you as long as you get into the program, graduate program.
Yes, however, then you'll need those prerequisites. The master's does require you to do like a physics course and like at least one introduction to communication. So there, if you decide to do speech pathology after your bachelor's, then most people have what's called a transitional year, where they do 1 year of the prerequisites.
Oh, I see.
Mhm.
Is there any major you would recommend they would study instead of just studying something random
Oh,
or that has absolutely nothing to do with the job?
that's actually a really good question. I would say maybe psychology would be really interesting because you work with psychologists a lot. Um, and you also deal with the same populations that people who are psychologists deal with. I think occupational therapy would be interesting because you also work with occupational therapists and they work with people with like autism and genetic disorders. Um, yeah, but I think that the best thing to do is just do the speech pathology. Actually, you have to get a bachelor's in speech pathology and audiology. So it's both the hearing, it's the you have to learn the hearing component as well.
So, um,
That's like the full name of the bachelor's degree.
but that's not a must, right?
Um, I think it used to be a must. I'm not sure if it's currently a must now, but when I was going to school, like, I think it had to be. Sorry, that's not a very certain answer, but I think most colleges just do that whole the whole curriculum with both the communications, like the language part of it, and then also the hearing part of it. Because hearing is a part of language too, because it's how you understand language. But then
So,
in grad school, then you can decide, do I want to get a master's degree in speech pathology or do I want to get a PhD in audiology? Yeah.
okay, so either you do a 5 year track, get things done faster for to get a bachelor's, and then bachelor's and master's,
Mhm.
bachelor's
Yes, and masters.
and master's in five
Mhm.
years.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, this
Yeah.
is like 1 year faster,
Yeah. Mhm.
or you do uh general different major and then you do a prerequisite and then transitional year and then you get the master's. Um, so technically, if you want to really focus on the specific field, you can do a, a audiology and then speech pathology bachelor's
Mhm.
and then switch to
Yeah,
master's.
so yeah, I know the audiology part threw a little curveball into things, but pretty much normally most colleges offer a full bachelor's called speech pathology and audiology. It's together. And then from there, you can decide, oh, do I want to become a speech pathologist and get a master's, or do I want to become an audiologist? And that's a whole different grad school
Oh,
track. Yeah.
so is that pretty a common major that many universities offer?
It's not. Audiology is definitely less of a common major as speech pathology, but most speech pathologists know about it because they had to study audiology courses during college and they work with audiologists in the future. But
Mm.
it's definitely a more niche field.
Oh, I
But
see.
I was really considering audiology as well during college because when I was getting my bachelor's. And so I was looking into like which universities in America offer that PhD. But at the end, I chose speech pathology.
So when did you decide to pursue this job?
I decided to pursue this. So I already knew about this field since 2013. That was when I was about um, 15 or 16 years old because someone from my church was a speech pathologist. But I never thought, oh, I want to do that until the college or even the fall, like the August right before college started. Because as I said, I was thinking music performance, and then something was not making me very satisfied about that choice. I love playing piano and cello, but I did not want to make it my life. And I know it's a huge commitment.
Yeah.
'Cause my mom is a piano teacher as well. And then so that I literally decided I wanted to do that job like in fall of 2015, which is when I started college. So
So how was doing the masters? Oh, and getting the prerequisites. How was it like?
It was really interesting, and remember, I did the prerequisites at Andrews, so I was able to apply for masters right away. Um, I realized how vast of a population that you work with as a speech pathologist. So, what I loved about Loma Linda is the amount of hands-on experiences we did. So, I had a voice disorders clinic where I as a speech pathologist, worked with elementary school teachers, teachers who had been working in the field for like 50 years, but they had experienced vocal abuse. And so you're teaching them how to speak in a way that is more gentle on their voice in a healthier way. We call it vocal hygiene. I also worked with a teenager who got into our car accident, and since then she was unable, she used to be an amazing singer and have like songs on Spotify, but after the car accident she couldn't sing anymore. And so speech pathologist deals with helping train their voice again to have more endurance and more um, intensity. And then, of course, I worked in an autism clinic, so I helped the students with sensory needs and social skills, social language. Um, Something interesting is I also worked in a skilled nursing facility, like a nursing home, and I dealt with a lot of patients with dementia, and we teach them memory strategies and attention strategies, communication, even with having dementia and Alzheimer's. Um, oh, thing I didn't mention earlier is um, speech pathologists. A huge part of their field is that we don't have in the title is swallowing, so eating. um, yeah, it's they. We are experts on swallowing, and so it's communication or it's language, speech, and swallowing. That's like the secret field that speech paths are very they have expertise in, especially in the hospital. So they are the ones who are helping patients who have been tubed up. Even during COVID, speech pathologists will help patients with COVID who woke up from a coma to be able to eat again, which helps their quality of life because nutrition is so important too.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are all things that I was able to experience through going to Loma.
That sounds like a lot. It sounds very broad.
It is a very broad field, but it's at the end of it, it's a basically giving someone a best chance at a life of abundant communication, whether it's verbally, whether they use devices, whether they use sign language. Yeah, because so many things could interfere with communication. Um, So yeah, it is very broad field and it's cool because you can kind of choose where you want to become an expert in. And there's so many job opportunities.
So swallowing and communicating, and what was the another one?
It's language, speech, and swallowing.
Okay. So language
Yeah.
is becoming the speech, and then being able to swallow food.
Yes.
So so you've been working as a speech pathologist for a year and a half, you said?
hmm
So how was your first month, and how is it now?
Wow, that's a really good question because I can speak on that for hours. My first month was so, 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 so hard. I currently work in the school setting, and as a speech pathologist in a school setting, many things are similar to just being a um, purely a speech pathologist, which is just treating and assessing. That's like the part we learn in grad school, but the part we don't have a lot of experience in grad school, which you have to learn during the job, are different ways that schools operate. We have stuff called IEPs. I don't know if you've ever heard of IEPs. They're basically like individualized educational plans for students. You have to know all the legal rules and mandates that the schools have to follow. and so many things to remember. And yeah, so I remember the first, I think at least 3 to 4 months of work where was so hard for me. I cried a lot. I thought I couldn't do this. It was so overwhelming and like so anxiety inducing, and my to-do list felt like it was this long. But now, currently, it really comes naturally to me, and it's so easy, and it feels a lot more natural. So it just really goes to show that any job has a high learning curve, and if you're just able to overcome it, it's crazy how much you can adapt. So
Wow. So, how many months ago was it that you started feeling comfortable?
I think I started feeling comfortable maybe exactly a year ago from now. So like January 2022. Yeah, I think that's when I started being like, oh, I got this. Like, this is easy. And now I see I'm able to actually enjoy my job and focus on, being creative and going more from doing what's necessary and what I need to do to survive in my job to more like just having more quality therapy for the students and building relationships with other staff members. And yeah, so I think it's
Are you the
um,
only speech pathologist in your school, and then you have to figure out on your own?
I am the only speech pathologist at my school. However, I am part of a district, and we have a someone who's called a lead speech pathologist who is not at my school, but she oversees all the schools. So I have her on phone or email, and we meet every month. And most places in the world have a speech pathologist they can talk to, and a team of other speech pathologists who are in their same city who they can like message, or for us we have a group chat, we meet in person every month. So
Awesome. So, for the first 6 months, you talk to them and you ask them questions, and they helped you.
oh yeah. Oh yes. I remember I called my lead speech pathologist like 10 times or more a day. Um, but now I think the last time I asked a question is just I threw a question in the group chat, once last week. So in the beginning, it was really helpful for a newbie, and yeah, so I definitely see a difference in that too.
Wow, that's awesome. So
Mhm.
you had the support going.
Yes, it's very supportive field, and you always know you have your grad school classmates because your cohort becomes close during grad school. So even if they're working in other cities, other settings, you can always call them. And yeah,
Wow,
it's
that's
a very
wonderful.
like close knit field because I don't think it's too popular yet. It's becoming more popular, but yeah.
That kind of network is some sort of informal makeup that you guys came up with, not an official like system you have to follow, right?
The support.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. It's not like legally mandated or anything. We have something called ASHA, which is called the American Speech Language Pathology Association, and ASHA does not require anything like this.
Well, I'm
So,
pretty sure it's very essential.
yes. Oh, but I did forget to mention that after your master's, you have what's called your clinical fellowship year for 9 to 12 months, which is your first year of work, and you are getting paid. However, you have to be supervised during that time, and so that is ASHA, or that is required in order to get your certificate, or your we call it your CCC, your certificate of clinical competence. So even though you're working, you have a older, like a 선배 speech pathologist who like comes bi-monthly
Uh-huh.
to supervise you and sign off on your work and stuff.
Oh,
It's kind of like your residency, or if you're in med school, if you think about it like
oh,
that.
I see.
Yeah.
So was that last year or was that during the graduate school?
Yeah, so that's after graduate school. That happens when you start working.
Oh, okay. So that was kind of last year, and then it ended.
Yeah, for me, that was August of 2021 and ended um, back in like April or May of this year.
Okay, so other than the informal support that you had from your cohort or of your friends, did it help?
Yeah, it was very helpful. Very interesting. So we call them our CFY supervisor, and it depends who you're placed with. I was blessed with a very helpful one who was always available through phone call, and then she would always make sure to schedule visits to my site, even though she actually lived quite far away. But I would call my other grad school friends, and they had some interesting CFY supervisors who are very negligent, who are very hands off. So it's a different. I don't. It's not. I'm not saying it's bad, but it may be a different style than what you're hoping if you want more support. But if you don't need that much support, then that might be a good thing. So, yeah. But that was definitely helpful.
Wow. So you had your friends, you had your group chat, and then you had your monthly checkups or
Yeah.
something, and then you had
Yeah.
CFI. So how were they different in the way that aided you in your uh, performance?
That's a good question. I think my CFY supervisor was probably the most reliable because they choose somebody who worked in the setting that you're currently working in. So they have experience. Whereas your cohort, they are like newbies just like you. So you just feel more empathy with them and you can, complain together or
You kind of
whatever.
vent.
But yes, you can dance. But yeah, so it's definitely different, and they might not know as much as your CFY supervisor might because they're probably older than you and have more experience. So,
Wow. So CFIs have done exactly what you have done before in the same area.
yes, they should. If they're, yeah, when they should pair you up with someone who did the same thing.
Wow. So how did you decide to work for school instead of like nursing homes or hospitals?
That's a great question because I really wanted to work in a hospital. I really enjoyed that setting in grad school. And I was like, no, there's too many things to think about, which I kind of mentioned earlier. But what I realized is um, um, when you start out as a speech pathologist, I think that my philosophy is that having the most variety and opportunities of different and diverse experiences um, is very very essential as like a newbie because it helps you to kind of like have a broad overview of what the field is like. And in a school setting where we have at least 45 to 60 students on a caseload, you have to learn good time management skills early on. You have to learn good interpersonal skills because you're always collaborating with the other teachers, the principal, the OT, um, the school psychologist. And furthermore, you have to take whatever kid is eligible for speech. And kids have medical issues too. So from cerebral palsy to autism to rare syndromes to cleft palate, you'll see all of that in a school because kids in a hospital have to go to school. And so that's probably the biggest reason why. Second reason is that the consistency of school hours are a huge contrast from the medical setting. um, in a medical setting, you never know when they'll be taken. What is the word? Taken out of the hospital. When they will be, when they will maybe pass away. So something for your CFY year is you need a certain amount of hours every day, and school is always the same, consistent hours. So those are the two reasons. The first one was it just helps you to become a more well-rounded professional, and you learn to work alongside with people. And secondly, is just the consistency of the school hours. It helps you get your CFY or your CCC quickly.
Wow. So I guess you like the consistency and the fact that you could learn different things.
Yes, for sure. I do really appreciate the consistency, and there's nothing better than being done with work around 3. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
S-
Whereas in hospital, I think it's typically like 5 or 6. So
So after you experience different things in the graduate school, you can pick. you have to apply and then they pick you.
Yes. So you can kind of see like, oh, what population did I really enjoy during grad school? And then you can apply to those different jobs and then pick. I think my advice for anyone who is watching this video and interested in becoming a speech pathologist is there are job opportunities everywhere, so don't rush because I think that was my mistake. I was like, oh no, I have to find a job. The first job opportunity that comes to me that has to be, the one that I choose. And I chose a very not suitable job for me. Um, but if you just wait and be patient and know exactly what you're looking for in terms of distance of where your job is, population, pay, I think you will be able to find the one you want because there's so many, truly so many open positions available.
So once you get that certificate that requirements met, pretty much the job market is not too competitive. It's not too bad.
Yes. Yeah, that is a really good point because a lot of places will say, "Oh, you must have your CCC," or "We're not looking for CFs, like we're not looking for basically people who are fresh out of grad school." So yes, you're right. Once you get that 9 to 12 month experience and you get that certificate, then you're pretty much, able to apply anywhere.
Wow. So you said
Mhm.
it has. I mean, it pays pretty good, and then it's you're enjoying the experience and job and how rewarding it is to help people. So,
Mhm.
would you say it was kind of competitive to get into the job, or do you think is like how bad was it going through all this and
Um, it was actually not competitive to get the job. It's very competitive to get to grad school, though.
okay, I
I
guess that was I should have asked that. Yeah, that
Oh
was my
yeah.
question. Yeah.
Um, you know, like I always compare it to medical school because so many people in our church are
Yeah.
they become doctors or it's a very popular field
Yeah.
and um it is super super difficult to get into medical school. However, something I noticed when I graduated from Andrews is almost all my friends got into medical school, but only like um, two out of the six seniors there got into a speech pathology graduate school, even though, or they were waitlisted. And I noticed that as a pattern time and time again. And so, what I'm trying to say with that is, I'm not saying medical school is easy to get into, but I think they have a wider acceptance number. Like they are able to accept like 100 people per class. Whereas speech pathology, I think schools cap it at 25 to 30 students. And so, because it's still like a little bit of a smaller field in America, I think it makes it a little bit more competitive. However, once you are in grad school and you get your degree and you find a job, it is truly, I think it's not too competitive generally, unless you want a really like very niche specific, like, oh, I want to work at Loma Linda Hospital in the inpatient department, then that might be a bit more competitive. But typically, that's not something that one should stress about.
So in a nutshell, to get into your graduate school seems to be more challenging than getting into medical school.
It seemed so like I think medical school is obviously very rigorous, very demanding, and there's lots of requirements. However, because they take in more students, that's what I noticed is like maybe all my friends are just super smart, but they all got into medical school, whereas Loma Linda speech pathology program seemed a bit more restrictive. So I'm not sure the exact reasoning for that, but I noticed that with other universities in the United States as well.
Wow, I see.
Mhm.
So are you planning on staying in a school for many years to come, or are you planning on switching to different fields?
I different fields, like different settings in speech pathology, or different fields altogether.
Maybe different job, different like medical field, or I mean,
Oh,
like
okay,
hospital,
different.
or yeah,
Oh, gotcha, gotcha. But still, as a speech pathologist,
yeah.
I definitely do. there is so much more to know as a medical speech pathologist, and I do feel that a lot of my knowledge in that area has to be refreshed, like all the things I learned during grad school. That's something I'm a little bit worried about. So my current plan is I want to be in the school for at least a couple more years, maybe like 5 max, and then I can consider maybe private practice or like a skilled nursing facility or a hospital. But my plans are not concrete yet. I'm definitely not going to stay in a school forever, but I think it does help with me feeling more comfortable in it now, me enjoying the holidays that it offers and the work-life balance. I really appreciate. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I see. Awesome.
Mhm.
Well, thank you very much, Deborah. Just a quick last
Yeah.
question. So, do you remember any specific patient that you remember that made you feel great about serving as one?
Mm. Oh, that's a great question. Let me think back on my experiences. Um, there was one student, I had a what was the syndrome called? Me, I'm looking up on Google. So there's a student who had a rare neurological disorder called Guillain-Barré syndrome. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. And basically, he was like a. This was when I was in grad school, and he was 5 years old. So 5-year-olds should be pretty tall by that point, but his limbs were compressed and his body was basically like the size of your daughter, like
Wow.
super small, very heavy torso because it was kind of like yeah, everything was just growing out of proportion. Um, and he was just like a heavy like a sack of potatoes. Like that's how it felt when I was holding him because he can't walk and stuff. That was very memorable to me because I think during my 4 months at that clinic, I was able to really help him to um, improve his language because he had very garbled, unclear speech. So I was able to help him speak more clearly and have more longer sentences. And that was a very meaningful experience for me because I was very inspired by his positive attitude and his happy go luckiness, even despite the tragedy of his situation. It's so easy to become very down and very just, um, affected negatively by that. But he was always motivated and willing to work hard every day. And just seeing him take my advice as a clinician and use it to benefit his own life helped me to see how important it is to help people to how much communication affects your quality of life and helps you to have a happier, more full life. There's a book actually that not a lot of people know about by Ellen White. It's called The Voice in hold on, Ellen White. Sorry, I'm looking all these up. Okay, it's called The Voice in Speech and Song. And I had never heard of this book by her before, but it's basically a whole book by Ellen White about how much God regards your speech and regards just the way you use your voice and the way you communicate, the tone with which you use it, how you articulate words, and that was a very inspiring read to me as well of how glorifying it is to help God or help others improve their language. Because I think that's God's biggest expression of love to us is His word. The Bible is His communication device to us of how much He loves us, the plan of salvation, and in the same way as we are created by God, like communication is so important to show our love to other people too. So that's what I learned from that particular client.
Wow,
So
you're doing something definitely very rewarding and powerful because I teach English and I see students improve their English and their demeanor changes and their attitude changes. They become more confident and more eloquent I think you're doing something similar, you know, a very more qualified way. I teach them how to speak, but you're dealing with people that have very specific problems that probably trained professionals can handle. So I'm very I'm very pleasantly surprised at how many things you can do in that field.
Yeah, it's quite surprising. I thought I knew so much about this field already, but going into school, I realized, yeah, it is a very broad field, a very impactful field.
Wow.
So,
Thank you so much, Deborah, for making time for this interview.
my pleasure.
Yep.
Thank you, Joa, for this awesome opportunity. I'll subscribe to your channel.
Thank you. I hope we can see each other again in Korea or through the interview or sometime in the future.
Yes, for sure. I will definitely be visiting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.